Imagine you're on a flight from Tel Aviv to Paris, a routine stopover in Athens behind you. You're relaxing, maybe reading a book or thinking about your arrival. Suddenly, the calm is shattered. This was the reality for the 248 passengers and 12 crew members aboard Air France Flight 139 on June 27, 1976. Just minutes after taking off from Athens, 4 hijackers stormed the cockpit and seized control of the Airbus A30. The announcement came over the intercom, chilling everyone to the bone. The plane has been hijacked. This wasn't a random act of piracy. It was a meticulously planned operation that would set the stage for one of the most daring rescue missions in history. The hijacking was a joint operation carried out by 2 members of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine External Operations and 2 members of the German Revolutionary Cells. Let's meet the key players. The leader of the group was Wilfried BSC, a German book publisher and a founder of the Revolutionary Cells. He was known for his calm, almost polite demeanor, which contrasted sharply with the terror he was inflicting. Alongside him was his girlfriend, Brigitte Kuhlmann. The other 2 were Palestinians, later identified as Jael Naji Alarjam and Fayez Abdul Rahim Jabbour. Their motive was clear and politically charged. They demanded the release of 40 Palestinian militants imprisoned in Israel, along with 13 other prisoners held in Kenya, France, Switzerland, and West Germany. If their demands weren't met within a few days, they threatened to start executing the hostages. For the passengers, confusion quickly turned to fear. The hijackers, armed with pistols and grenades, patrolled the aisles. The normal hum of the jet engines was now underscored by a tense, terrifying silence. One of the flight engineers, Jacques Lemoyne, recalled how BSC entered the cockpit and, holding a grenade with the pin removed, calmly announced, "I am the new captain." The original captain, Michel Bacos, was ordered to change course. He remained composed, focusing on the safety of his passengers and crew, even as a gun was pointed at his head. He would later be hailed as a hero for his refusal to abandon his Jewish passengers. The hijackers directed Captain Bacos to fly south. Their first destination was Benghazi, Libya. The country, under the rule of Muammar Gaddafi, was known for its support of various anti-Israel factions. The Airbus A300 didn't have enough fuel to reach their ultimate destination, so a refueling stop was essential. Landing in Benghazi was a tense affair. The plane circled the airport for hours before finally being granted permission to land. On the tarmac, the heat was stifling. The hijackers refused to let the passengers use the air conditioning to conserve fuel, turning the cabin into a sweltering prison. The ordeal was just beginning. During the nearly 7-hour stop in Benghazi, a critical moment occurred. A British-born passenger named Patricia Martel, who had feigned a miscarriage, was released. Her convincing performance saved her life and provided the outside world with the first direct account of what was happening inside the plane. She was able to give authorities crucial details about the number of hijackers and their weapons. The hijackers, meanwhile, were growing more anxious. The refueling process was slow, and their control was being tested. Finally, with the tanks full, Flight 139 took off from Benghazi and disappeared into the night sky. Its destination still a mystery to the world and to the terrified people on board. Their new course took them further south, deep into the heart of Africa. After hours of flying in darkness, the plane finally landed at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. The choice of location was no accident. Uganda was ruled by the brutal and erratic dictator, Idi Amin, who had a complex and deteriorating relationship with Israel. He had previously received military aid from them, but had since severed ties and aligned himself with Arab states and the Palestinian cause. As the plane taxied to a stop, the passengers peered out the windows to see Ugandan soldiers surrounding the aircraft. It quickly became clear that Idi Amin was not a neutral party. He was an active collaborator. He welcomed the hijackers as heroes, providing them with additional troops and supplies. The passengers and crew were herded off the plane and into the old, disused terminal building at the airport. The conditions were squalid. The building was dilapidated, with broken windows and filthy floors. Men, women, and children were crammed together, sleeping on dusty mattresses or the bare concrete. The sanitation was non-existent. For the hostages, the initial shock gave way to a grim day-to-day struggle for survival. The hijackers and Ugandan soldiers stood guard, their presence a constant reminder of the danger. The psychological toll was immense. Fear, uncertainty, and the loss of all control defined their existence. Idi Amin himself made several appearances, striding into the terminal hall like a theatrical monarch. He projected an image of a powerful mediator, telling the hostages he was trying to negotiate their release. But his words rang hollow. He would list the hijackers' demands, portraying himself as a sympathetic figure, but his actions told a different story. He was clearly in league with the terrorists. His speeches were rambling and bizarre, a mix of false reassurances and thinly veiled threats. For the hostages, seeing the head of state openly collaborating with their captors was a devastating blow, extinguishing any hope of a simple diplomatic resolution. Back in Israel, the government was facing an agonizing dilemma. The policy was clear: never negotiate with terrorists. But with over 100 of its citizens' lives on the line, the pressure was immense. The families of the hostages held desperate vigils, demanding action. Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and his cabinet were locked in tense, round-the-clock meetings. Publicly, they appeared to be considering the hijackers' demands to buy time. Secretly, however, the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, were exploring a military option. But Entebbe was over 2,500 miles away, deep in hostile territory. A rescue mission seemed impossible, a suicide run. The turning point came with one of the hijackers' most fateful decisions. On the third day, they made a selection. They separated the Israeli citizens and anyone with a Jewish-sounding name from the other passengers. This chilling act, carried out by the German hijackers BSE and Kuhlmann, evoked the darkest memories of the Holocaust for the Jewish hostages. Over 100 non-Jewish passengers, including the French crew who heroically refused to leave, were then released and flown to Paris. Captain Bakos famously told the hijackers, "All the passengers are my responsibility, and I will not leave them." His flight attendants followed his lead. This separation, however, did two things. It isolated the Israeli hostages, making their situation even more perilous. But it also provided the IDF with a wealth of new intelligence from the freed passengers. They could now build a detailed picture of the terminal layout, the number of hijackers, and the deployment of the Ugandan guards. The clock was ticking, and the deadline for the first execution was fast approaching. The Israeli government knew they had to act, and the seeds of Operation Entebbe, one of history's most audacious rescue missions, were sown. What happened next would go down in legend. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as compelling as we do, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video, where we'll cover the incredible raid on Entebbe itself. See you next time. 6:40 p.m. departure from Benghazi. The plane turned south, the seashore receded below, and spread out the vast African desert. Hours of flight, inside, silence, and sobs. Final destination in the heart of Africa. Entebbe, Uganda, June 28, 1976, 3:15 a.m. Entebbe International Airport. At 3:15 a.m., in the dark, in the pitch-black African sky, Flight 139 touched down on Entebbe Airport's runway. Below, the black waters of Lake Victoria shimmered the world's largest tropical lake in the middle of the African continent. Entebbe, Uganda's former capital, it's a beautiful but now politically turbulent city on the shores of Lake Victoria, 30 kilometers from the capital Kampala. Passengers peered out the windows, and what they saw was mind-blowing. Armed Ugandan soldiers, SIN jeeps, trucks, on foot deployed everywhere. Lights burned along the runway. Military vehicles patrolled. This wasn't just hospitality, it was an organized, pre-planned reception. It wasn't coincidence, it was planning. And in this planning, Uganda's dictator was willingly involved. Idi Amin Pazel, dictator, facilitator. Field Marshal Idi Amin, Dada Uganda's dictator. Understanding Idi Amin is impossible without grasping the Entebbe crisis. Coming to power in 1971 through a military coup, Idi Amin was a figure whose reality remained blurry to the world. 6 feet 4 inches tall, military uniform laden with medals, loud voice, grand Kleinzan behind it, a character that was a mix of fear and greed. Amin's relations with Israel were a complicated story. In the 1960s, Israel had trained him militarily, supplied weapons to his army, considered him a close friend. But in 1972, Amin suddenly changed everything, broke ties with Israel, expelled about 7,000 Asian residents from Uganda, and drew close to Libya and the Palestinian movement. Now in 1976, Amin wasn't just a host, he was actively helping the hijackers. When Amin came to meet the hostages at Entebbe Airport, he arrived smiling, shaking hands, saying he would help them, but some hostages later said they realized this man was not their friend. Amin sent messages to the United Nations claiming he was a mediator. He accused Israel. He presented himself to the international media as a peacemaker while the Ugandan army guarded the hostages, meaning they were prisoners, not guests. Idi Amin was the most dangerous wild card in this entire story, a man with no freedom, no law, no conscience, no responsibility. Ugandan army, lies or guards. The old terminal turned prison. There were 2 terminals at Entebbe Airport, one new and active, and one old that an Israeli construction company had built in the 1960s and was now closed. The hijackers moved all hostages to a large hall in this old terminal. Outside, armed Ugandan soldiers stood. Inside, armed PFLP operatives. The room was hot, stuffy, smelly. On mats spread on the floor lay 106 people, frightened, hungry, thirsty, drowning in uncertainty. Their role was clear. They weren't protecting the hostages, they were preventing them from leaving. The darkest moment, separation of Jewish passengers. The sorting echo of Nazi history. June 28, 1976, morning. This was the most painful moment. Not just physically, but psychologically. The hijackers lined up all passengers. Passports were checked one by one. Jewish, Israeli, stand aside, and people out of fear, helplessness, separated. Non-Jewish passengers were gradually released. French citizens, European travelers boarded onto planes and allowed to leave. It was a calculated strategy. The hijackers didn't want international attention to spread too much. But those who remained were 106 Jewish and Israeli passengers. And with them were the 12 members of the Air France crew who refused to abandon their passengers. Captain Michel Bacos was given a chance to leave, but he said, "As long as my passengers are here, I'm here." This decision by a French pilot became an example for generations to come. When the hostages saw this separation, when those with Jewish names were set apart, the elderly hostages looked at each other and trembled. They remembered the 1930s and 1940s and trains. On platforms when the Nazis had done the same. Separate the Jews, separate, separate. Some Holocaust survivors were among the hostages in that Entebbe hall. They wondered if they were reliving the same story. Dora Blaka, separate tragedy. The 75-year-old elderly woman hospital, disappearance and fate. Among the hostages was an elderly woman, Dora Block, age 75. She held dual Israeli and British citizenship. Traveling with her son Yitzhak, ordinary mother, an ordinary trip. During captivity, a piece of food got stuck in her throat, creating a medical emergency. She had to be taken to Malago Hospital in Kampala. Here, her story took a completely separate and darkest turn. After the operation, when Israeli commandos would free everyone in one night, Dora Block wouldn't return. The British government protested. Uganda denied. Idi Amin said she had disappeared from the hospital. Years later, witnesses and investigations revealed Ugandan soldiers took Dora Bloch from the hospital, killed her, and dumped her body in a sugarcane field in Uganda. Years later, her remains were found near the Kenya-Uganda border. Dora Bloch, the most heartbreaking part of this entire story. An old woman who wanted to go home and couldn't. Demands deadline extreme ultimatum. The hijackers' conditions? June 28, 1976 deadline announcement. On June 28, the hijackers formally announced their demands. Hearing them stunned the world. First demand: immediate release of 40 Palestinian political prisoners held in Israel. Second demand: release of 13 more prisoners held in 5 other countries around the world, including West Germany, where Baader Meinhof group members were imprisoned, France, Kenya, Switzerland, and Sweden. Total 53 prisoners from different countries, different ideologies, but all to be released for one purpose. Deadline: July 1, 1976, 2 p.m. Threat: if demands not met, all hostages would be killed. The list of prisoners included members of the Japanese Red Army, who had participated in the 1972 Lod Airport massacre in Tel Aviv. This demand was doubly painful for Israel hostages on one side and the condition of releasing those same killers on the other. The world's reaction meet diplomacy. Global uproar storm in every capital. As the news spread, uproar erupted in every major city worldwide. In Paris, the French government called an emergency meeting. Their citizens were captive. Their airplane hijacked, and their crew had shown humanity, but were hostages. France urged Israel to negotiate at any cost. In London, the British government contacted Uganda immediately based on Dora Bloch's British citizenship, but got nothing but Idi Amin's laughter. In Washington, the U.S. administration, this was Gerald Ford's privately told Israel they could provide military help, but were with them diplomatically. Statements came in the United Nations, debates on resolutions, but as always, diplomatic words are never sharper than guns. International media covered the story massively. Headlines changed daily. Experts analyzed on TV channels. Reporters tried to reach Uganda. But in Tel Aviv, outside the airport, the most painful scene was unfolding. Sisters clung to each other. An old woman said to the camera, "We survived the Holocaust. Is this our end?" This one sentence sank into the heart of the entire Israeli nation and didn't leave. In Jerusalem's Prime Minister's office, an endless series of emergency meetings began. Yitzhak Rabin, Israel's Prime Minister. Yitzhak Rabin, or hero, former military general, and now Israel's Prime Minister. A man who didn't always bend under the weight of responsibility, but certainly felt it. Initially, Rabin leaned toward negotiations. His argument: 106 lives are at stake. No principle, no ideology is bigger than a human life. If people can be saved through talks, we should talk. Rabin contacted the French government, searched for possible mediators, saw if there was a middle way. Shimon Peres, defense minister. But Shimon Peres, who later became president and prime minister, had a completely different view. Peres said, "If we bend once, we'll bend forever. The world will know Israel can be intimidated, that our citizens can be hijacked, and will release prisoners. This will be an invitation to our enemies. We must find a military path, no matter how difficult." Cabinet meetings went on for hours. Tea grew cold, but debates stayed hot. Some ministers were with Rabin, some with Peres. Some were silent because deciding wasn't easy. Israel's official policy was no negotiations with terrorists. But 106 people's eyes appeared on TV, and this policy weighed on the heart like a stone, hard to lift or throw. Deadline: the sands of time. July 1st, first deadline and extension. July 1st, 1976, 2 p.m. July 1st came and passed. Israel signaled negotiations. This was a deliberate tactic to buy time. The hijackers were assured that their demands were perhaps being considered. The hijackers extended the deadline to July 4th. July 4th, America's Independence Day, and for Israel, the final time before a decision had to be made. But the situation inside, the hostages' condition worsened daily. The heat was unbearable. Food was extremely scarce. Elders' health deteriorated. Children cried day and night. Adults hid their tears and consoled each other, but inside, everyone was breaking. Mossad silent, intelligent, dangerous. Intelligence operation, gathering information. While the cabinet debated, Mossad was at work. Israel's secret agency Mossad is counted among the world's most powerful intelligence organizations. In 1976, it had to do something that had never been done before. The first need: solid information. What was Entebbe Airport's layout? Where was the old terminal? Which room held the hostages? What were the room's dimensions? Which way did doors open? How many armed guards? When did they change? Where was light? Where darkness? Mossad started work on multiple fronts, interrogating released hostages. When known Israeli passengers were released and reached Paris and other cities, Mossad agents were already there. Hours of questioning, every tiniest detail. What was the room's scene? What did hijackers wear? What weapons? What language did they speak? What was the night routine? Who slept? Who stayed awake? How many Ugandan soldiers? Each answer was a puzzle piece. Mossad pieced them together. Kenya's role. Kenya, the closest friendly country to Entebbe, quietly helped Israel. Mossad agents activated in Nairobi. Latest Uganda situation obtained from local sources. Airport's original maps. A crucial discovery: Entebbe Airport. Old terminal where hostages were held was built by Israeli construction company Salabone in the 1960s. Mossad contacted the company immediately and obtained the original blueprints. Every room, every door, every corridor, every bathroom, every window, all mapped. In a secret place in Jerusalem, based on these maps, full model of the terminal was built. Made of wood, paper, cardboard, miniature Entebbe Commandos would practice repeatedly. Military planning preparation for a silent storm. Israeli Defense Forces Operation outline. While negotiations debate continued, the army did its job. IDF Chief of Staff General Mordecai Gur ordered, prepare a military option for immediate use if political path closes. This operation wasn't easy. In fact, no such operation had ever happened in military history. Problem 1. Entebbe is about 4,000 kilometers from Israel, the outer limit of C-130 Hercules planes range. Problem 2. Enemy countries in between Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, Egypt, impossible to cross their airspace. Problem 3. Idi Amin's army in Uganda, heavy weapons deployed at the airport. Problem 4. In the dark of night, on enemy soil, extract hostages without harm and return. But for CRA Israel's most elite secret commando unit, these were problems, not impossibilities. Yonatan Netanyahu, commando unit leader. Leadership was given to Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu, and everyone called Yoni. He was the older brother of Israel's former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Sharp-minded, brave, beloved among his comrades. Yonatan told his unit, "We'll go, we'll save, and we'll return every hostage." His voice had the conviction that convinced others too. Operation name. The operation was named Operation Thunderbolt. The roar of thunder, the crack of lightning. Later, it would be called Operation Yonatan, after its martyred commander. But no one knew that yet. Final cabinet meeting, history's moment. Negotiations or military action. July 3, 1976, morning, Jerusalem. July 3 morning. Cabinet room. Members in seats, some tired, some anxious, some silent. Maps spread on the table of Entebbe Airport, Uganda, Lake Victoria. Military commanders presented the full operation outline. How many planes? How many commandos? How much time? Details of every step. They said, "We can do this. But there's risk. My risk is never zero." Mossad's director presented the intelligence report. Room map, number of guards, their positions, terminal structure. The report was strong, not flawed. Then debate again, long and exhausting. Negotiation supporters said, "We can't kill people to save them. If the operation goes wrong, hostages and commandos both die." Military action supporters said, "If we accept demands, more hijacks tomorrow." This won't stop. Only force will stop it. Rabin was quiet. In his eyes was the face of that old woman who said, "We survived the Holocaust." Rabin picked up a paper with the operation approval text. He lifted the pen, paused, and then signed. End of Part 1. The Storm's Knock. Decision made, but the world unaware. At a secret Israeli military airbus, night's darkness had fallen. For C-130 Hercules transport planes stood at the runway's edge. Engines were being checked, every part, every system. No weakness allowed, because they had to go thousands of miles and return. Fuel was being loaded. Weapons loaded silently, quickly, with full responsibility at every step. In a room, maps spread on the table of Entebbe. Internal structure, guard positions, escape route, sand fingers traced them repeatedly. Commandos checked their weapons one more time. Focus in eyes, skill in hands. Something in hearts only they knew who go on such missions. Yonatan Netanyahu gave his unit one last look. All were ready. All silent. The decision was made. The operation was about to start. But the world was still asleep. Outside Tel Aviv's airport, mothers' arms were empty. In that Entebbe hall, 106 people lay on the floor in fear, uncertainty, between hope and despair. And thousands of miles away, a silent airbase, a storm was ready to rise that would turn history's course. The world didn't know yet, but a chapter of history was about to be written that future generations would read and be left breathless. In Part 2, the operation's start. Commandos' arrival at Entebbe Airport and the moment when the world held its breath. Operation Entebbe Part 1 complete. Direct from Part 1, where we left off. In Part 1 you saw the hijacking of an ordinary flight, the stop in Benghazi captivity, in Entebbe the separation of Jewish passengers, Dora. Bloch's tragedy, the storm in the Israeli cabinet, Mossad's silent preparations. Then the moment when Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin signed and the decision was made. Now Part 2 begins from the moment the planes warm their engines. When commandos shoulder their weapons, and when history's clock starts ticking. Scene 1. Preparations before flight. For C-130 Hercules Rails Hope. July 3, 1976, Evening Secret Military Airbase, Israel. At a secret Israeli military airbase, evening shadows deepened. Along the runway stood for large C-130 Hercules transport planes, powerful, heavy, and the only viable option for these conditions. The C-130 Hercules, an American-made aircraft used worldwide for military operations, can land on rough or semi-prepared runways, carry heavy military equipment, and fly in the dark of night. But the biggest issue, Entebbe is about 4,000 kilometers from Israel. 4,000 kilometers, keep that distance in mind. The distance from London to New York is about 5,500 kilometers. This was slightly less, but still an unbelievable span to be covered in the dark of night, through enemy country's airspace, without alerting anyone. What was loaded into the planes? First, C-130, operational force. CRA MACCall commandos, paratroopers, medical team, and the secret equipment central to the operation of black Mercedes car and Land Rover Jeeps. Second, C-130, backup troops. Members of the Golani Brigade and Parachute Brigade to secure the airport and block any counterattacks. Third, C-130, medical unit and hostage return. team of doctors, medical supplies, and space for the rescued hostages to sit. 4th, C-130. Fuel and reserve manpower. Arrangements for refueling in Kenya were also through this. How many commandos? Overall, the operation involved over 200 soldiers and support personnel, but the core operational force, responsible for directly rescuing the hostages, consisted of about 29 Sayre Makal commandos. Every commando was fully briefed: room map, door positions, guard locations, escape route. Each knew what to do and in how much time. Scene 2. The silent flight of 4,000 kilometers. In the dark of night below radar, July 3, 1976, 11 p.m. flight begins. At 11 p.m., when people in Israel were sleeping, the 4 C-130 planes took off one by one and turned south. The most important instruction during flight: complete silence. Radios off, external lights minimal. No messages, no announcements, because if any enemy country's radar picked them up, the operation would end before it started. Route from Israel's southwest over the Red Sea, then down along Africa's eastern coast through Ethiopia, Kenya, and toward Uganda. Military pilots flew the planes at extremely low altitude, just a few hundred feet above sea. Level 2, avoid radar detection. This was an incredibly dangerous flight in itself. Flying so low in the dark risked accident every moment. Condition of commandos in the plane. Seated in the plane's belly, the commandos were silent. No talk, no music, no laughter. Each replayed their task in their mind room map, step count, target position. Some closed their eyes not for sleep, but concentration. Some checked their weapons one more time. Some did nothing, just sat, because that's their training. Move when the time comes, otherwise stay calm. Yonatan Netanyahu sat among his comrades, the same face, the same calm eyes. He knew what the coming hours would bring. But he didn't know this was his last flight. Mossad's coordination. During the flight, Mossad agents were active on 3 fronts. In Kenya's capital, Nairobi, where fuel and medical facilities were being arranged. In Jerusalem, where the cabinet sat awake, receiving moment-by-moment updates. And in the field, where final intelligence confirmations were happening. Kenya's government under President Jomo Kenyatta had quietly agreed to provide Israel with refueling facilities. This was a huge risk. If Idi Amin found out, Kenya could face severe consequences. Scene 3. Entebbe operation begins. The black Mercedes imitating Idi Amin. July 4, 1976, C-11:01 p.m. Entebbe Airport. At 11:01 p.m., the first C-130 touched wheels on Entebbe Airport's runway. The plane's lights were off. Engine noise kept minimal. Ugandan soldiers were along the runway, but no alarm yet because the plane stopped in a position far from the terminal. And everything was blurry in the night's darkness. The plane's rear door opened and a ramp descended. The first thing to roll down was a Cara black Mercedes-Benz. Strategy: the cars roll. Why the black Mercedes? Because Idi Amin's official convoy consisted of black Mercedes cars. In the dark of night, when Ugandan soldiers were on guard, a black Mercedes meant one thing: either a high officer arriving or the president himself. The plan: commandos would ride in this car toward the terminal. Ugandan soldiers would salute. The car would pass and commandos would enter the building. Behind were 3 Land Rover Jeeps with the rest of the commandos aboard. It was a bold ploy. If it worked, half the job would be done without firing a shot. The moment something went wrong, the convoy left the runway and advanced toward the terminal. In the distance, 2 Ugandan soldiers appeared. They stopped, saw the Courant, then a moment of silence. The problem: the Israeli commandos' car was black. But Idi Amin had recently changed his official vehicles to white. This information hadn't reached Mossad. One Ugandan soldier raised his hand stop signal. The convoy halted. Both soldiers approached hand, then peered inside the car. Some faces were unfamiliar. The next moment, changed everything. Scene 4. The first shot. Silence broken. July 4th to 11th, 4 p.m. One Ugandan soldier tried to raise his weapon. The Commandos didn't wait. Two silenced shots fired through silence vanished into the night's air. Both soldiers fell, but then one soldier fired his weapon before dying. A loud blast tore through the knight's chest. The operation silence was broken. Now, speed was the only way. Move, move, Yonatan ordered. Now, the vehicles sped forward. Commandos jumped from jeeps, hit the ground, and ran toward the terminal, each to their assigned position, each knowing their target. Scene 5. Old terminal knock at the prison. Entry inside. Commandos shout. 11:05 p.m. AOD terminal. Entebbe. The old terminal. In a large hall of this building, 106 hostages were sleeping or sitting awake because sleep no longer came to many. A gunshot sounded outside, then more sounds, and then the door broke. Commandos stormed the building. The hijackers inside immediately alerted. Wilfried B.S. raised his weapon. Commandos started shouting in Hebrew and English. Get down, down, on the ground, get down, get down, don't move. The hostages heard the voices in Hebrew and a wave surged through their hearts. Hebrew, Israelis have come. But they still couldn't believe it because it seemed impossible. It seemed impossible that someone had come from so far just to save them. An elderly man later said, "When I heard Hebrew, I thought I was dreaming." But it wasn't a dream. The remaining 4 Palestinian operatives were eliminated in minutes. Their training was good, but CRA Makal commandos were better trained. Within a few minutes inside the hall, 6 hijackers were dead. Instructions to hostages. Commandos now called to the hostages. Israeli army, everyone up. Run outside, now, quickly. To the plane. People rose in panic, in tears. Some half asleep and started running. Elderly, sick, children. Commandos supported them, lifted them, carried them on shoulders if needed. Don took them outside. Outside, Land Rover jeeps waited. Hostages were seated in jeeps and sent toward the C-130 planes. Scene 6. Yonatan Netanyahu final moment. Martyrdom commander who didn't return. Around 11:15 p.m., Yonatan Netanyahu, the operation commander, was outside the building overseeing the hostage rescue when firing came from the airport control tower. A bullet hit Yonatan from an unfortunate angle, from the back, likely from a Ugandan sniper on the control tower or hangar. He fell. Fellow commandos lifted him. The medical team arrived immediately, but the bullet had penetrated deep. Yonatan Netanyahu was loaded into a C-130. He was still breathing. But during the return flight, he took his last breath. The man who told his unit, "We'll all return," didn't return himself. That night, Israel's army lost only 1 commando, but he was the most important. Later, the operation's name was changed from Operation Thunderbolt to Operation Yonatan, so this brave commander's name would be preserved in history forever. Scene 7. Destruction of Ugandan planes. 11 MiG fighter jets ashes. 11:20 p.m. airport hangar. While hostages were being boarded onto planes, another team was on a crucial mission. Israeli planners knew if Uganda's military planes took to the air, the return flight could be endangered. The C-130 is a heavy transport plane. It can't match MiG fighter jets. So the decision, destroy those planes on the ground. In Entebbe Airport's hangar stood 11 MiG-17 and MiG-21 fighter jets of Uganda's Air Force. A special team reached there, placed explosives and got out in minutes. Explosions happened one after another, and all 11 planes were engulfed in flames and turned to ashes. Uganda's Air Force practically wiped out in one night. No threat in the sky. Now the C-130s could fly freely. Scene 8. Ugandan Army's response. Chaos, but too late. When the first shot fired, chaos erupted among Ugandan soldiers, but a key part of Israeli strategy was that paratroopers and Golani brigade soldiers had surrounded various airport sections. blocked military vehicle paths, and responded immediately to every counterattack. Some Ugandan soldiers fought, but they weren't prepared for such fast, organized, and effective action. Their training and experience were less than the Israeli commandos. Idi Amin in Kampala got the news, but by then, it was too late. By the time he could do anything, the operation's most important part was complete. During the operation, about 45 to 50 Ugandan soldiers were killed. The number varies in different sources, but it was clear resistance happened and was answered. Losses and operation duration. 53 minutes a whole story. From 11:01 p.m. to 11:54 p.m., the operation's total duration was about 53 minutes from the first plane's landing to the last plane's takeoff. 53 minutes, since which 106 hostages were freed, 6 hijackers killed, 11 fighter jets destroyed, and the Israeli army departed. Losses. Israeli army, only 1 martyred Lieutenant Colonel Yonatan Netanyahu. Additionally, about 5 commandos wounded, all returned. Hostages, 3 hostages killed. 1 from crossfire bullet, 2 others victims of accidental fire or chaos. About 10 wounded. Dora Blaku was in the hospital, didn't survive, later killed by Ugandan soldiers. Hijackers. All 7 hijackers, 6 in the terminal, and 1 caught, later killed. Ugandan army. About 45 to 50 soldiers killed. Number varies in sources. Scene 9. Kenya path to return. Nairobi, Kenya fuel and shelter. July 4, 1976. Morning, Nairobi Airport. The 4 C-130 planes took off from Entebbe and headed northeast to Nairobi, Kenya's capital, about 600 kilometers from Entebbe. At Jomo Kenyatta International Airport in Nairobi, the night silence, the 4 planes landed. Kenyan authorities quietly allowed them to refuel. Hostages sat in the planes, still trembling, still disbelieving. Some cried, some laughed, some embraced each other in silence, as if words were insufficient. The medical team provided immediate care to the wounded. Yonatan Netanyahu had taken his last breath during flight. His body was respectfully aboard. Kenya's step was diplomatically extremely risky when Idi Amin found out. He threatened Kenya severely. But Kenya's government held its stance. Fuel loaded, medical arranged, and the planes took off again, this time toward Israel. Scene 10. Israel return. Home again, the nation's wait. July 4, 1976. Morning, Ben Gurion Airport, Tel Aviv. Morning lights spread over Ben Gurion Airport. Thousands gathered, their hostage families, journalists, officials, and ordinary citizens who stayed awake all night listening to news. When news came of the first C-130 appearing like a dot in the sky, a wave surged through the crowd. Planes touched down, doors opened, and hostages emerged. Mothers recognized their children's children, their parents' couples embrace. Then the crying began that was a mix of joy and pain. Name. In the Israeli army, his name is forever linked with Sira Makol. His younger brother Benjamin Netanyahu felt his brother's martyrdom deeply, both personally and politically. Later in life, when Benjamin entered politics, his hard stance against terrorism, belief in force over negotiations, was largely a reflection of the tragedy he endured in 1976. Political consequences, Israel and the world. Operation's political effects. In Israel, the operation's success gave Yitzhak Rabin's government a major political boost. Public popularity rose. But Shimon Peres also gained confidence that his stance was right. The military option wasn't impossible. However, the longest effect in Israeli politics was strengthening an ideology. Do one bend before terrorism, no matter the cost. Benjamin Netanyahu's political journey. Natan's younger brother, Benjamin Netanyahu, studied in America, served in the army, and entered diplomacy. In 1996, he became Israel's prime minister for the first time. His political views always formed in the shadow of his brother's martyrdom. Hard stance against terrorism, belief in power, rigid attitude toward Palestinian movements, these are part of Benjamin Netanyahu's personality, and those who look closely at his biography see July 4, 1976's night as its root. Idi Amin's reaction and Dora Bloch's murder. The dictator's rage an innocent woman's death. When Idi Amin got news of the operation, he flew into a rage. He condemned Israel, complained to the international community, and threatened Kenya for helping Israel. But his darkest decision was not sparing Dora Bloch. Dora Bloch, who was in Malago Hospital, was taken from the hospital by Ugandan soldiers within hours of the operation and killed. The British government demanded answers from Uganda. Idi Amin said she wasn't there. They didn't know. In 1979, when Idi Amin's regime ended and investigations happened in Uganda, was revealed she was murdered and her remains found in a sugarcane field. Dora Bloch, the only Entebbe hostage who never came home. Her death is a wound in this entire story that never fully heals. Idi Amin's end. Idi Amin fled Uganda in 1979 when Tanzania invaded and his government fell. He lived in exile in Libya, Iraq, and then Saudi Arabia. He died in Jeddah in 2003, evading international law, never facing a court. Impact on military doctrine the world learned. Operation Yonatan, World Military Academies. Operation Entebbe. Operation Yonatan is taught in military academies worldwide. It wasn't just a rescue operation, it was the birth of a new military doctrine. What lessons? First, accurate intelligence is the biggest weapon. Mossad obtained terminal maps, detailed interrogations from released hostages, and created an operational model matching ground reality. Second, speed and surprise, the soul of military operations. The entire 53-minute operation testifies to this principle. Third, training and use of elite special forces. If regular army was sent, the result would differ. Only highly trained and organized units can do such operations. Fourth, political nerve-Robin's decision and sticking to it was as important as military planning. American Delta Force, British SAS, German GSG-90 learned from this operation. After the failed 1980 attempt to rescue hostages from the U.S. Embassy in Iran, America restructured its special forces, and experts said they lagged in learning from Entebbe, legal and ethical questions, world opinions, criticism, and praise. Despite the operations, successful and legal debates erupted worldwide. Criticism. The African Organization OAU condemned Israel, saying a military operation on a sovereign country's soil without permission violates international law. The Soviet Union also condemned it. Some legal experts questioned, does a country have the right to conduct military action on another's soil without permission, even if the purpose is human rescue? Support. America, most Western European countries, and many UN members praised the operation. Their stance: when a country's government facilitates terrorists like Idi Amin, traditional international law principles don't apply. Protecting human lives is bigger than national sovereignty. This debate hasn't ended. It's alive today in international law books, UN meetings, and military academy classrooms. One major ethical question. The biggest ethical question. Israel didn't inform the hostages before the operation, didn't take them into confidence. If the operation went wrong, their lives were at risk, then this decision was made without them. Some hostages later stayed silent on it, some questioned. But when mothers embraced their children back home, this question receded for a while. In books, analyzes, military journals, this operation revives repeatedly because it's not just an event, it's a symbol when a state stands behind its citizens with full resolve. Right intelligence and clear decision, the impossible becomes possible. Conclusion: history's command. Final words: what history teaches. Operation Entebbe wasn't merely a military action. It was proof that when a state stands firm for its citizens with complete determination, accurate intelligence, and clear decisions, it can make the impossible possible. This story is also a reminder that history isn't made only from big wars. History is made from moments when one person, one commander, one politician makes the right decision at the right time. Yitzhak Rabin signed and history changed. Yonatan Netanyahu gave his life. Air France Captain Bakos didn't abandon his passengers because he saw it as his duty. And 106 hostages who just wanted to go home were brought back. Sometimes history isn't written with speeches, not diplomacy, not announcements. Sometimes history is written with precision, speed, and the resolve that when odds are impossibly, act anyway. This was Operation Yonatan. Its message is as powerful today as on that night of July 4, 1976, when lightning struck in Entebbe's darkness, and the whole world saw that nothing is impossible. Operation Yonatan from July 3, 1976, forever. In memory of Lt. Col. Yonatan Netanyahu, 1946 to 1976. Operation Entebbe. Subscribe for more historical documentaries, like if you learned something new, and comment your thoughts on Operation Entebbe below. Disclaimer: this script is a dramatized retelling based on historical accounts and publicly available information. While efforts have been made to ensure accuracy, some details may vary across sources. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not represent official views or endorsements. For full sources and references, please check the description below.